A little girl just asked Elon Musk about God. His response brings her to tears. The hallway of St. Mercy's Children's Hospital was quiet, save for the occasional beeping from machines and the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes. Elon Musk walked slowly, hands in his pockets, his usual confidence tempered by the stillness of the place. He wasn't here for a press event or a photo op. This visit was different, personal, quiet. He had donated new ventilators and solar panels to the hospital months ago, but this time he wanted to see the kids, just see them. Something about the idea of tiny lives fighting silent battles had stirred something in him lately, something he couldn't name. As he passed a room with paper stars taped to the door, a small voice called out, "Are you Elon Musk?" He turned. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, sat on the bed, her head wrapped in a lavender scarf. Her eyes, big and glassy, held the kind of weight that no child should carry. "Yes," he said, stepping inside. "And who are you?" "I'm Mariam," she said. "I saw you on YouTube. You made rockets." He smiled. "That's right. I make rockets. Trying to get us to Mars." She nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. Then, without warning, she asked, "What happens when we die?" Elon blinked. The question struck him like a comet. He looked at the nurse, then back at the girl. "Well, that's a big question. I know," she whispered. "But I think about it a lot." "Do you?" He paused. Truthfully, he didn't. At least, not in the way she meant. He'd thought about preserving consciousness, about simulation theory, about AI and cryogenics. But not this, not the human part. "I guess I don't have a good answer," he admitted. "Science doesn't really tell us everything about that." Mariam tilted her head. "Do you believe in God?" A silence filled the room like thick fog. Elon sat down on the edge of her bed, something he hadn't planned to do. He stared at the floor, then at her, and something cracked open inside him. "I don't know," he said softly. "I've always believed in asking questions, in trying to understand the universe, but sometimes I wonder if there's something bigger than all of it, bigger than me." She nodded, almost as if she'd been waiting for that. "Do you think God forgets about us when we're sick?" That question didn't come from curiosity. It came from pain. Elon's throat tightened. The hallway was silent again, but this time it felt sacred, like a cathedral of whispered thoughts. And somewhere deep in the core of the man who builds futures, something shifted. Elon Musk didn't speak right away. He looked at Mariam, really looked at her. Her tiny fingers fiddled with the hem of her blanket, and though her eyes were wide with innocence, there was an ancient sadness there. The kind of sadness that even adults don't know how to carry. "I don't think God forgets anyone," Elon finally said. "If God is real, then maybe he remembers us most when we're hurting." Mariam blinked slowly. "But why does he let the hurting happen?" Elon leaned back in the chair, a sigh escaping his lips. This wasn't a question from a textbook or a panel discussion. There was no algorithm for this, no rocket to fix it. "I don't know," he whispered. "Maybe it's not about fixing everything. Maybe it's about being with people when things hurt. Maybe that's what matters more than answers." Mariam looked down at her hands. "I used to pray a lot," she said. "But when I didn't get better, I stopped. I thought maybe God was busy with other people, people who mattered more." Elon's voice cracked. "You matter." Her eyes lifted, catching his. "Even to someone like you?" He nodded. "Especially to someone like me." In that moment, it wasn't about status or science. It was a man, a father, sitting with a child, feeling utterly helpless. But something strange was happening too. Mariam wasn't just asking questions. She was awakening something in him, something long buried. "You know," Elon said slowly, "when I was younger I used to read a lot. Stories about people who lived long ago. One of them was Jesus. Have you heard of him?" Mariam nodded. "My mom says he was kind and helped people who were sad." Elon smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's what I remember too. He didn't have much, but he listened. He noticed people." He paused, then added, "Sometimes I think we forget to do that. We get so busy building things, chasing success, trying to conquer planets. We forget the people right in front of us." Mariam whispered. "Do you think Jesus would have visited me?" Elon didn't hesitate. "I think you'd be the first person he'd visit." That answer made her smile for the first time. And it was that smile, soft, fragile, full of life, that would haunt Elon in the best way. That night, long after he left the hospital, he couldn't sleep. The questions played over and over in his mind like music from a distant piano. What happens when we die? Why do we suffer? Does God remember us? He'd spent his life building answers. But this little girl, in one short conversation, had shown him something he'd never confronted before. Maybe the questions mattered more. The days after the hospital visit blurred together, but something in Elon had changed. He moved through boardrooms and launch updates with a strange distance, as if a piece of his mind remained in that hospital room, sitting beside a girl who asked about death and God, as if she already knew something he didn't. He began to read again, not just about physics or AI, but about faith, philosophy, the soul. Books he hadn't touched since his youth. Works by C.S. Lewis, conversations from Plato, the teachings of Jesus, especially his words about children, suffering, and love. One evening, he found himself at a dinner party in Los Angeles. The room was filled with minds that shaped the modern world, innovators, artists, thinkers, even skeptics. As the wine glasses clinked and the conversation flowed from economics to extraterrestrial life, Elon remained quieter than usual, his thoughts elsewhere. Then, an elderly woman across the table, soft-spoken, silver-haired, watching him carefully, leaned forward. "Elon," she said gently, "you've changed. What's on your mind?" He hesitated. Then, almost involuntarily, he said, "A little girl asked me what happens when we die." The table went quiet. "And I didn't know what to say," he continued. "She looked at me like I should have the answer, but I didn't. I still don't." The woman nodded. "Do you think there is an answer?" "I used to think everything had one," he said. "Every problem had a solution. But it's different." She asked if God forgets us when we're sick, if he still listens when we're hurting. One of the guests scoffed lightly. "Well, that's religion for you. No proof, no data, just hope." Elon didn't respond with logic or debate. Instead, he asked quietly, "But what if hope is the point?" That silenced the table. The elderly woman smiled. "There's a verse in the Bible," she said, "where Jesus says, 'Let the little children come to me.' He didn't tell them to be smarter or to have the right beliefs. He just welcomed them, because they asked, they trusted, they loved." Elon nodded slowly. "I think that little girl reminded me what it means to ask, without expecting a perfect answer." Another guest, a tech founder, leaned in. "So are you saying you're starting to believe in God now?" Elon didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think I'm starting to believe in something more. Something that science doesn't measure. Not yet." The elderly woman's eyes glistened. "Sometimes, when we stop needing answers, we start seeing meaning." That night, as Elon walked to his car under the starlit sky, he looked up, not at Mars or the Milky Way, but simply at the stars, like a child seeing them for the first time. And he whispered to the dark, "If you're out there, I'm listening." Weeks passed. Elon returned to his usual rhythm, factories, launches, interviews. But something had shifted. Where his mind once chased numbers and orbits, it now wandered into stiller places. He found himself reflecting during quiet moments on life, death, love, and what might come after. Late one night, he sat in his study, the glow of a fireplace illuminating a copy of the New Testament he had picked up again. He wasn't sure what he believed yet, but the words of Jesus had begun to feel less like myths and more like whispers from something ancient, something true. There was one verse he kept returning to. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." He didn't know why it hit him so hard, but Mariam's voice echoed in his head. "Do you think God forgets us when we're sick?" He closed the book and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. What if the real question wasn't about death, but about being seen? That thought lingered until a familiar tug pulled at his chest. He opened his phone, found the hospital's number, and made the call. 2 days later, he was back at St. Mercy's. The hallways looked the same, but something in him didn't. He passed the room with paper stars again, only this time he stopped outside, unsure what he would find. Inside, Mariam was there. Older, slightly taller, her scarf now replaced by a headband. She was sitting up, coloring a picture of a lion and a lamb. She looked up and smiled, her eyes widening. "You came back." "I said I would," Elon said softly. She set her crayons down. "I didn't think you'd remember me. People forget." He stepped inside, sat beside her again. "I didn't forget." They sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "Did you find the answer?" He looked at her, then shook his head. "Not exactly, but I've learned something." "What?" "That maybe the question is more important than the answer." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Elon smiled. "You asked me something that shook me, Miriam. You made me think about life differently. I've been reading, praying, trying to understand. And I realized something." He leaned forward. "Maybe we're not supposed to know everything. Maybe we're supposed to love each other, hold each other, ask questions, and keep walking, even when we're afraid." She nodded, eyes shining. "Do you still think God forgets us?" he asked her. She shook her head. "No, I think maybe he's closer when we're hurting." Elon blinked back the sting in his eyes. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "Okay. I think you taught me more than any book, or scientist, or rocket ever has." Miriam smiled again, not just with her mouth, but with her whole face, the kind of smile that holds light. And for the first time in a long while, Elon felt small in the best way, like a soul in a big, beautiful mystery. The hospital visit stayed with him, more deeply than he expected. Elon had spoken at conferences with the world's brightest, walked factory floors with the hum of creation all around him, but none of it compared to sitting with a child who asked him about eternity like it was just another step down the hallway. He started waking up earlier, not to check stock prices or respond to engineers, but just to sit quietly. Sometimes he'd look out at the sunrise and think about the questions Miriam asked, about God, about suffering, about being forgotten, and more than anything about the wonder of not knowing. At first, that idea terrified him. His entire life had been built on finding answers. He had sent rockets to space, connected continents with satellites, bent time with technology. But now, the greatest revelation was this. He didn't have to know everything to believe in something bigger. One evening, he stood on the balcony of his home, watching his sons play in the backyard. Their laughter echoed through the air, pure and untamed. He felt a lump in his throat. Is this what heaven feels like? He remembered Miriam asking if Jesus would visit her. And in her question, he had seen something profound, that faith wasn't about certainty, it was about trust. Later that night, he sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Miriam, she didn't need anything more from him, but to himself. "Dear Elon, you've spent your life chasing stars, but today you sat with a little girl who taught you how to be still. You once asked what it meant to live forever. Maybe the answer isn't in Mars or AI. Maybe it's in a child's question. Maybe it's in loving when it hurts and believing when you can't see. Keep listening. Keep wondering. That's where God is." He folded the note, tucked it into the back of his journal, and stared out the window again. The next morning, a reporter asked him a strange question during a podcast interview. "You're always talking about the future, Elon. But what do you believe happens when all this is over, when you're gone?" Elon paused, smiled softly, and answered, "I used to think the goal was to live forever through technology. Now I think maybe forever is already happening, in kindness, in memory, in the way we change each other." The host blinked. "Are you saying you believe in God now?" Elon shrugged gently. "I'm saying I believe in something. I believe in love, and I believe in the power of a question." A few months passed. Life moved on, as it always does. Elon continued his work, factories buzzing, satellites launched, ideas blooming across continents. But something was different now. There was a stillness beneath it all, a humility, as if he'd made peace with something he didn't need to conquer. One morning, he returned to St. Mercy's again, not with cameras or fanfare, just a quiet visit. He found Miriam in the courtyard, sitting under a tree, a book in her lap. Her cheeks were fuller now, her eyes brighter. She was winning her battle, slowly, gently, miraculously. When she saw him, she grinned. "Hey, Rocket Man." Elon chuckled. "Hey, philosopher." She patted the bench beside her. He sat. "I have a new question," she said, her voice playful but deep. "Of course you do," he smiled. She turned to him. "What's the most important thing you've ever learned?" Elon looked out across the courtyard. Birds fluttered in the branches above them. Somewhere, a nurse laughed. He thought about the companies, the science, the breakthroughs. Then he looked at Mariam. That love is real, he said. That asking questions takes more courage than building rockets. That the people we meet can change us forever, even the smallest ones. She nodded. I think that's what Jesus tried to teach. I think you're right. They sat there in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Mariam picked up her book again. It was a children's Bible. She opened it, pointed to a passage. This one's my favorite, she said. Elon leaned in. It was from the book of Matthew. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. He felt a lump in his throat. That's beautiful. Mariam smiled. I think heaven starts when we care more about each other than ourselves. Elon took a deep breath. You might be the smartest person I've ever met, she giggled. You just don't meet enough kids. They talked for another hour, about stars, God, dreams and fear. And when it was time to go, Elon stood, paused, and looked at her one last time. Thank you, Mariam, he said. For what? For asking me the question that changed everything. She beamed. Come back again. I will. He walked away slowly, not like a man rushing to his next mission, but like someone who had finally arrived somewhere. And as he stepped into the sunlight, one final thought echoed in his mind. Maybe we're not here to solve every mystery. Maybe we're here to love boldly, to ask deeply, and to walk through the unknown together. In a world of machines, equations, and futures not yet born, a little girl had taught the world's most brilliant mind that faith isn't weakness. It's wonder. And sometimes that's all we need.